The first game in our list is arguably 3 games in one. We follow the career of Erwin Rommel, starting in France 1940, through North Africa in 1941, and ending with D-Day in 1944. Each of these 3 campaigns has their own map, difficulty level, and victory conditions. Besides playing them individually, they can be linked together in a career mode, where the outcome of one will affect the victory conditions and the difficulty of further campaigns. Also, with each campaign, there are a list of historical options that you as the player can set that modifies and adjusts the difficulty level of that particular playthrough. This also improves the replayability of each of the campaigns. Another nice feature is units, as they win battles, their statistics increase. That affects future battles and movement. I think that's a nice touch to a game that reflects hard-earned combat experience while you're playing the game. Most campaigns can be played in about 2 hours, so it's not too long of a game as well. This game is also the first in a series of solitaire historical operational level board games that go from ancients to Napoleonics to the American Civil War. Many feel that this game is the best of the series. I would rate the counter set a 6 out of 10, and I would rate the map also a 6 out of 10. Neither are stunningly beautiful, but they're functional, and they do look nice on the table. The first game in our list is Field Commander Rommel. It has a BGG rating of 7.0, a complexity weight of 2.43. The designer is Dan Versen, publisher Dan Versen Games, 2008. The second game in our list is a tactical level game of man-to-man combat on the Western Front in World War II. One of the unique features of this game is its innovative program paragraph system. During gameplay, you can trigger one of the 1,000 different paragraphs from the paragraph book. Paragraphs like, a soldier notices a glint of metal in the trees across the river, or a German mortar strike. Another unique aspect of this game is squad generation. You start by rolling dice to determine how many points you get to spend on building out your squad, and then you also roll to determine how many points you get to spend to buy your weapons to equip your squad. Each soldier also has 5 characteristics: initiative, perception, weapon skill, driving skill, and movement point allowance. And if they're a commander, their command radius. The squad creation really allows for a narrative style of play. Even though you can recreate your squads with each mission, you can also role play by keeping your squad from mission to mission, linking it together to form a campaign. That's really the way I like to play. The game has had 3 expansions created for it, as well as a Pacific Theater version of the game, which also had 1 expansion module created for it. Additionally, there's another game based on this system that puts you in command of US tanks in World War II. I can guarantee you this game will give you a unique and enjoyable solo wargaming experience. The second game in our list is Ambush. It has a BGG rating of 7.5, a complexity weight of 3.26. The designers are John Butterfield and Eric Lee Smith, publisher Victory Games in 1983. Our third game takes us to a final desperate Confederate attack on January 3, 1963 at the Battle of Gettysburg, Pickett's Charge. This game uses a clever push-your-luck mechanic. How hard do you push your troops across the deadly ground before you allow them to rest and consolidate? But time is not on your side. You only have 5 game turns to cross the open ground and break through the Union lines at Cemetery Ridge. Movement across the battlefield is handled by rolling 2 dice and consulting a movement results table. Poor dice rolls will bring heavy fire and potentially rout you, losing precious ground you have gained. Higher dice rolls will bring less casualties and move you closer to the Union lines while securing those gains. During the chaos of battle, there's always a chance for random events. Rebel Yell. A unit finds a fold in the ground, and give 'em the cold steel, boys. all help your cause. While the Union might bring up reinforcements, mass for a counterattack, or hit you with an artillery barrage. Not only do these events add a colorful narrative to your gameplay, they also help add replay value to the game. At the end of the 5th turn of the game, you calculate your victory points. Anything below 20 is a total catastrophe, and anything above 180 is an incredible victory. And the Confederacy can negotiate a peace between the North and the South. You've won the war. I rate the counters in this game a 7 out of 10, and the map also a 7 out of 10. Again, neither of these are stunningly beautiful, but they're not an eyesore either. Our third game is in magnificent style, Pickett's Charge at Gettysburg. It has a BBG rating of 7.7, a complexity weight of 1.89. The designer is Herman Luttman, and the publisher was originally Victory Point Games and subsequently by Worthington Publishing in 2012. The fourth game in our list takes us back to Europe after D-Day. This game is actually one of several games that make up a much larger gaming system. Other games in this system that handle World War II deal with the Pacific, North Africa, and the Mediterranean. There is also a modern-day tactical special forces version of the game, as well as a fantasy game. This is a card-based game system that also includes over 100 expansion decks of roughly 56 cards each that vary from things like the Battle of Tarawa, shore invasions, and the addition of Russian troops and even the French resistance. All of the games mentioned in this system are compatible and interchangeable. You can mix and match how you like. It plays from 1 to 6 players, but it is a solo game, and if you play with 6 players, you just play it cooperatively. There is no map per se for the game. The game board is used to organize the various decks that are constructed during gameplay. There's an action deck, a hostile deck, a deck of location cards, and an event deck. You also have a mission card and an objective card. Mission cards define how many points you have to spend to construct your squad, along with any weapons that you might need in order to achieve your goals in the mission. This is another great narrative style game, and missions can be linked together to form campaigns. With the sheer amount of content for this game system and the replayability that is truly endless, I highly recommend this game system. Our fourth game is Warfighter. The World War II tactical combat card game has a BBG rating of 7.9, a complexity weight of 3.14. The designer is Dan Versen, publisher Dan Versen Games, 2016. The fifth game in our list takes us to the Pacific in 1941, where you command an American submarine. Your mission is to destroy as much shipping and Japanese warships as possible. During the game, you might command one of the 9 U.S. fleet submarines that are represented in the game, with patrol assignments out of Pearl Harbor and Australia. One of the things I think is pretty cool about this game, it actually has 720 named historical ship targets. There are actually targets during World War II. Another pretty cool aspect of this game that really adds to the narrative is the crew advancement rules. At the start of a campaign, you begin as a lieutenant commander, and your crew starts off as trained. The crew skill levels are green, trained, veteran, and elite. After several successful patrols, you or your crew members have a chance to improve their skill levels. These improved skill levels provide positive dice roll modifiers for future patrols. Also during the campaign, you as the skipper of your boat may get a promotion from lieutenant commander to commander and potentially even captain. Also, both you and your crew can earn awards and decorations. The Navy Commendation Ribbon, a Bronze Star, a Silver Star, the Navy Cross, Medal of Honor, a Purple Heart, Submarine Combat Patrol, and unit awards like the Navy Unit Command, the Presidential Unit Citation, and a Battle Star. Overall, I rate the components of this game an 8 out of 10. Our fifth game is Silent Victory, U.S. Submarines in the Pacific, 1941 to 1945. The game has a BGG rating of 8.0, a complexity weight of 2.84. The designer is Gregory Smith, publisher Consim Press and GMT Games in 2016. The sixth game in our list puts us in the skies over occupied Europe during America's daylight strategic bombing campaign. You'll be flying a B-17, a YB-40, or B-24. This is another narrative-style game in which you manage your crew. The campaign game, much like the historic tour of duty for the air crews, is 25 successful missions. One of the critiques of this game is it's very table-driven and there's lack of player agency. But I would argue in real life the crews had the exact same issue. They were on a mission to a set target, they dropped their bombs, turned around, tried to get home safely. You do the exact same thing in this game. This game can be brutal at times. You could literally crash on takeoff and lose your whole crew. And during the campaign game, you can expect that you will have crew members killed and injured. Some of them will return from those injuries, some of them will be sent home, and you'll get replacements. During each gaming session, you're encouraged to keep a mission log, where you track things like enemy aircraft shot down, engine fires, and injuries to your crew members. It's quite an accomplishment to complete one mission. If you're fortunate enough to complete a tour of duty, 25 successful missions, then your logbook has documented a truly wonderful gaming experience. I rate the counters and components of this game an 8 out of 10. It really is a beautiful game, and I highly recommend it. Our sixth game is Target for Today. Has a BGG score of 8.1, a complexity weight of 3.34. The designers are Steve Dixon and Sean Reif. The publisher is Legion Wargames, 2017. Our seventh game takes us to the jungles of Vietnam in 1965. You control both the American and South Vietnamese forces through the entirety of the war. The victory conditions for this game are pretty simple. You just have to hold off the North Vietnamese for 50 game turns. There are 4 game turns a year, starting in 1965, which means you just have to hold off the North Vietnamese until the middle of 1977, 12 and a half years. This is an ambitious game that covers the full scope of the war in Vietnam. The game covers the Tet Offensive and both the Cambodian and Laos incursions. This game does a very good job of mimicking the history of the Vietnam conflict over the 12 and a half years the game represents. The early part of the war, the U.S. forces try to bolster the South Vietnamese while at the same time holding back the North Vietnamese incursion into South Vietnam. In the middle years of the war, you will have a strong U.S. presence, but that won't win you the war. You will need a stable, strong, and growing South Vietnamese army and police force to defend themselves from the VC and the North Vietnamese. In the late war, the NVA will launch a large-scale cross-border attack in 1972 called the Easter Offensive, followed by a massive spring offensive of early 1975. If you've done your job in the middle of the war, you've built up the South Vietnamese army and police to hold off these 2 offensives. If not, Saigon will fall and the war is lost. I rate the game components a 6.5 out of 10. Our 7th game is Save South Vietnam. It has a BGG score of 8.2, a complexity weight of 2.40. The designer is Robert Phaneuf, publisher Fortress Games, 2021. Our 8th game takes us back to the Pacific, 20 November 1943. You command the invading American forces against the dug-in Japanese defenders on the island of Bedo in the Tarawa Atoll. The battle on this tiny island raged for 4 days, and there were fewer than 200 of the original 5,000 Japanese defenders remaining alive at the end of the battle. The game uses an innovative diceless combat system that highlights unknown enemy deployments and the importance of the right weapons and tactics. Event cards keep the action flowing, and the rules are simple, while introducing extensive historical detail. The game has 4 scenarios. The first scenario is 10 turns long and is all about establishing a foothold on the beaches. The second scenario represents the full day of fighting on November 20th and lasts 15 turns. The third scenario represents the second day of fighting on the 21st, starts on turn 17 and ends on turn 30. The fourth scenario is the complete 2-day battle, including turn 16, which is a night turn. The whole scenario lasts 30 turns. As mentioned, the game uses a diceless combat system, using a combination of the colored symbols on the map and cards that are pulled and cross-reference to a Japanese fire table used to determine casualties. It's a little intimidating when you first look at the map with all the colored dots and then trying to figure out how the cards integrate, but once you figure it out, it actually flows pretty smoothly. I rate the counter set as an 8 and the map and other game components also at an 8. It's a pretty nice looking game. Our 8th game is D-Day at Tarawa. Has a BGG score of 8.2, a complexity weight of 3.73. The designer is John Butterfield. The publisher is Decision Games, 2014. The 9th game on our list keeps us in the Pacific. June 19th and 20th, 1944, near the Mariana Islands. The game represents a battle that has been called the greatest aircraft carrier battle in history. This is one of the larger games in our list and contains 9 scenarios. The first 5 are all introductory scenarios, designed to teach you the basic rules. Scenario 6 represents June 19th, Scenario 7 represents June 20th, and Scenario 8 represents the 2 days of fighting with night actions. Scenario 9 is a what-if scenario. What if Midway didn't happen or Guadalcanal? The Japanese fleet would have been stronger. Scenario 9 represents this. You play as the U.S. commander as you maneuver your task force and conduct air searches, trying to find the Japanese carriers before they locate and attack you. You can only launch strike attacks on detected Japanese fleets. And once your strike force gets out there, you then have to make contact with them before you can actually resolve the combat. This could lead to you sending out a strike force, not finding the contact. Not only do you miss an opportunity to strike the Japanese force, you could leave your own fleet unprotected. I think the game does a good job of simulating carrier flight operations. From managing your cap, to assigning search operations, and when to launch airstrikes. I rate the counter set as a solid 8, and the map and the player aids come in at a 7 for me. If you like a big solitaire game, a little more on the complex side, this one's for you. Our 9th game is Carrier Battle Philippine Sea. Has a BGG score of 8.7, a complexity weight of 3.93. The designer is John Southard, publisher Compass Games, 2023. The 10th game in our list keeps us in the Pacific. Seems I might have a bias with this list. This is another big game with over 8 counter sheets. The game is a simulation of the United States Navy's submarine war against Imperial Japanese in World War II. You serve as the commander of submarines, U.S. Pacific Fleet, ComSub Pack. Like I said, guys, this is a pretty big game. The game features scenarios that cover short single sub patrols, small campaigns, and then a grand campaign covering the entire Pacific War, approximately 178 turns. It's a biggie. The game also contains a hypothetical scenario, East Wind Early, the submarine campaign in the 1930s. So that one sounds really interesting. Another nice touch to the game is on the counters, all the submarines and surface ships have their actual names printed on them. How cool is that? Even though this is a big game, I found learning the rules not that difficult. Playing the short, single sub scenarios really helps you learn the rules. Between the previous game and this one, you have the U.S. naval actions in World War II, the Pacific, pretty much covered. I rate the counter set a strong 9. Player aids, also a 9. I rate the map an 8. This is a game I highly recommend. 1, because of the subject matter, and 2, because of the gameplay. Our 10th game is Silent War, 2nd edition. has a BGG rating of 8.8, a complexity weight of 3.67. The designer is Brian Miller, publisher is Compass Games, 2023. We have a bonus 11th game and a sneak peek. This is a solitaire area movement game, volume 2 of a series, The Battle of Manila. This is a playtest copy that I happened to pick up at SD Histicon, and the game will be released second quarter of 2024. I will be having a playthrough video of this game on my channel before the end of January 2024. Enjoy the rest of the sneak peek, guys, and thank you for watching. Manila, The Savage Streets, 1945. It'll be published at the end of the first quarter of 2024, and we happen to have a playtest copy of it. The designer is Mike Ranella, the publisher is Revolution Games and Take Aim Designs. End of first quarter 2024.